The May 26, 2022 called meeting of the Camden County Board of Election and Registration is called to order. All members are present with the exception of Dr. Janet Bradford, who will be here momentarily. Please rise for the opening ceremonies. Let us pray. Dear Lord, please wrap your loving arms around and bring comfort to those suffering from the Ross Elementary School shooting in Texas, the Tops grocery store shooting in Buffalo, New York, and the countless other horrific tragedies carried out by a man. We pray for the victims, the loved ones, the first responders, educators, our family and neighbors. Please, God, help us find unity. We pray for the world and that the peace will prevail. Amen.
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 Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. All right, are there any amendments or corrections to the agenda? There being no amendments or corrections, the agenda is adopted as written. We'll move on to public comments. When you come to the podium, please state your name and address. We're limiting public comments to 3 minutes. Please direct all comments to the chair, as the board will listen to your comments and concerns, but will refrain from responding to any questions. Any other comments?
Thank you, Rachel Baldwin, precinct number 8, Kingsland. I appreciate you responding as we requested a recount of what I think is 324 absentee ballots. I need to clarify why that decision was made. We are in a symbiotic and a codependent relationship with you all. And I'm very proud that when I go before or meet with other county party chairs, I can speak with great assurance that our election board is on top of things and working real hard to make everything right. In that codependence, we depend on you all to run the elections, and y'all depend on us to get people there to vote and to get up candidates and all that kind of stuff. In that symbiotic relationship, we both need to advocate for what will make those things correct and what will be best, not only for our voters, our candidates, but also the process. And we know that a lot of people are disturbed about the process, especially since 2020. But there are things that the other night I was somewhat disappointed in. Hang on, let me get my notes here. As far as the election equipment, and this is the main point of this request for a hand count, specifically the absentee ballot scanner. It was inadequate and inefficient. As I understand, the Georgia Secretary of State makes it fiscally prohibitive to purchase other equipment. My emphasis today is on documenting the inefficiencies and avoiding the level of stress that I think everyone had Tuesday night in the counting process that delayed the outcome to the public. If in November we have this same scanner, and instead of 324 absentee ballots, we have 3,000, we're really going to have a much greater challenge in being able to address that. When I looked at how do we address that, and I don't like to create more work for our election staff, they are already woefully overworked, and I believe woefully underpaid. I wanted to see if we could figure out a sample solution to look at that. I was looking at numbers that were incomplete, but I was looking at numbers that may represent tight races. I think everybody on this side is sleep deprived. I am too. And so when I put some of this together, I may not have been as clear as I needed to be in doing that, but I felt like a sampling was the solution. And to look at those 324 ballots, that's the ones I have questions about. As I saw them going into the scanner, have to delete out numbers, hand recount, put them back in the scanner. For the public who was showing up, it looked like ballots were being rescanned. They were being rescanned, but this is not a sound clip. They were being rescanned to get to the solution that wound up to be unduly necessary, very stressful. And I just don't think that a volunteer workforce who has put as much blood, sweat, and tears into this as y'all have should have to deal with that. Furthermore,
About 30 seconds.
Furthermore, if we took a sampling, it looked to me like the 2 commission races would be a reasonable sampling of those ballots. Therefore, I requested sampling of the commission races. Those seem to be the races that our local folks are most passionate about, that out in the hall I was getting the most questions about. And I felt like if we took that sampling, it would be just enough to be able to see if there were other inefficiencies in those absentee ballots. And then that could be your decision as a board to see if we needed to go further. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Please state your name and address.
Steve Winkle, 114 Schooner Court, Woodbine. I believe that the sample should be the full lot of 324, if that's the correct number. I think,
Bring that closer.
I'm sorry, I'm not close enough.
I need to hear it a little.
Is that better?
Make it louder. Yeah,
Okay,
there. Thank you.
thank you, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I want to hear it.
My wife yells at me for speaking too loudly because I wear hearing aids.
Before you start, Dr. Bradford is now in attendance, just for the record.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I believe the sample should be all of the absentee ballots at a minimum. I think the reason is that it took them 2.5 hours to run 324 ballots, and that you may or may not find what you're looking for in a small sample. In addition to that, the sample of 324 would represent approximately only 10% of the ballots that would be expected in the general election. And therefore, that would represent a 10% sampling of what you are facing down the road. And therefore, I think that cutting it back to 22 or 48 ballots would be too small of a sample to identify enough of the problems. This is an area that I have a specialty in, problem solving. I am a troubleshooter by trade. I know how to look at problems like this, and if you take too small of a sample, you've wasted your time, and all you've done is kick the can down the road to where you're faced with not a 2.5-hour delay in November, but you may be faced with an all-night delay, and then that will catch much more scrutiny than doing it now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please state your name and address.
Kelvin Blue, 4515 Georgia 40 Highway, Suite B, St. Mary's, Georgia. It seems to me that the real concern and issue is limited to the scanner for the absentee ballots. If that be the case, then with consideration, how hard is it to replace this scanner, do the recount, and move forward? So my direction would be, so we don't have this conversation in November, get the scanner replaced. What will it take? What is it going to cost us more to replace it? Clearly we have an issue. If we didn't have an issue, if the scanner can be verified, working 100% appropriately, then don't replace the scanner. And then if that is true, then we should not have any issues going forward. i.e., is there a need for a recount if we know that everything has been proven and verified by an outside source working the way it should work? That's it. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? All right, before we get started, I'm gonna address a couple of questions. The only formal written request we have right now is for two races, District 2 and District 4 commissioners. We have no other formal requests out there, so that's what we're going to be dealing with. Also, the scanner, we've already called Dominion. They are going to send a tech down to verify, once again, that it's either working or isn't. And it's what we call a logic and accuracy test was done prior to May 24th election. It passed satisfactory with Dominion, who did the LNA for us. All right, at new business, absentee by mail recount request for May 24th primary special election from the chair of the Camden County GOP. That's what we'll be working on today. Shannon, would you like to start?
Sure.
Okay.
All right. Good afternoon, board, and thank you all for being here. This morning, as you can imagine, this has been on my mind a lot since Tuesday night. And this morning, I thought it best if I reviewed the 343 absentee ballots that were scanned on Tuesday night. There were 343 absentee ballots. Well, the first thing I did really was yesterday played with the scanner to see if it was maybe a roller issue, or how the ballots looked, if they had all of their proper markings on them that they need to have in order to be scanned properly. So I did check on that. I did change some settings in on the scanner yesterday. That didn't really help. I even tried to put ballots through there that didn't have a mark on them and hadn't been folded. And that was still an issue. So definitely talk to Dominion. They're gonna send somebody to look at it. It sounds like there's probably a roller issue or an alignment issue. So, but this morning I reviewed the 343 ballots with two staff. Yep. Two staff were with me, and I am confident in the numbers that were reported. At 1:25, I think was my last report Wednesday morning. In the findings, my review included just review of the District 2 and District 4 commission races. And I'm confident that the numbers reported are accurate.
Yeah, go ahead. Mr. Michaels is,
During the first,
Talking to
can you turn your mic on?
I was heavily involved in the process, in the counting. Question as to. Are there any others, have you checked with any other boards of election around the state on a regular basis to see if they had a similar problem or a problem exactly the same as this?
So yesterday, our Dominion technician was back, the one who worked with us on Tuesday night. She was back with us to finalize some items, and I asked her because she is in a group message chain with a bunch of other Dominion technicians that are present at different locations throughout the state, and asked if there were other people having issues with the scanner. She said she knew of one that she had spoken with, and they readjusted their settings on their scanner. They had the exact same kind. Not everyone has the same scanner. But
The
they,
question I asked is, there were other,
well, I know of one in particular.
she's on a link of how many?
I didn't ask her that. I don't
And
know.
we don't,
Yeah.
and we don't know if it's the same scanner.
Yeah,
It could be a
And
completely
so,
different-
the question is there was a question on the use of equipment
yeah,
that could generate a problem with the system.
yeah. But she fixed hers. The girl I'm speaking of that she knew, she fixed hers with a setting that revolved around a long paper ballot, which we had in this election, and it was able to be fixed. That's why I feel that it's probably something to do with either the alignment or a ruler. Because we ran LNA, we had a
I
huge
realize
stack
that.
of LNA ballots.
We run those kinds of things as novices. We're not experts in the equipment per se, internal workings of the. Saying that.
It was done by Dominion technician.
But shouldn't the Dominion technician have the wherewithal to troubleshoot this type of thing? That's why we have the technician coming and why we requested that they be here. And we're paying good money for them to be here. But we still had the problem on election day that we discussed during are we going to get the warranty? And I know my question was, if we run into a problem, do we have help? Do we have help on election day?
And it is going.
And nobody was able to answer that satisfactorily, and now we have the problem.
Yeah, going forward, I mean, we're looking at problem solving going forward. I mean, in truth, we may have no problem at all. Method in which we approach the review, they indicate that we have no problem at all, but the situation presented itself in such a fashion that it looked like we could have had a problem. Concern is, if we had a technician, we paid for the technician to be there. It's looking at the whole thing because in total, because it created an impression that there might be some indication that there was a problem and we didn't get on top of it right away. But the testing will prove that should show whatever results.
Well, I think,
Correct.
yeah.
That's right.
I think the Dominion technician that was with us was more situated on the server end, not technical difficulties with the printer. I'm assuming she didn't have any lessons on that, so.
So we had no.
So we did what we knew to do, lift it up, wipe it down, check the rollers, spray the spray, whatever,
In the ballots.
yeah.
Yeah.
So.
So what's the criteria for the scanner to say this is not a ballot and I'm going to reject it? Is that-
The scanner's set up with parameters that it uses, and it's determined whether if we want the scanner to stop on a double vote, an overmark, an ambiguous mark. If there's just a dot and there's not enough of a fill-in of the circle, it could stop. So those types of things it can be set at. It was set to read all the ballots, and if there was an issue such as that, then it would be in our adjudication process where we would correct that or have it looked at to determine what the voter intended to vote.
So approximately how many do we have to adjudicate after we scan? Do you remember the number?
I think it was 18,
So 18.
I think, at the end.
Did the adjudication board have any issues with the way the images were on the screen once they were scanned and they were looking at them on the screen? Was there any issues with the adjudication board?
No.
I think we have two members here. Yes, yes, Ms. June?
Sir, there were no indicators that there was any problem as we were looking at.
Okay. Mr. Blue, I believe you're on there also? I concur. Okay, so there was no issues with the ones that were rejected and we needed to adjudicate.
We adjudicated 18 absentee ballots.
On the screen.
On the screen.
The ones that wouldn't go over to,
Okay.
yeah.
We'll have an open question here in a little bit, but I'm just trying to get the facts out right now.
Just to go along with that, I still designed the committee that was
I did.
doing the adjudication.
Right.
Witnessed what they, both of them.
So basically the scanner, as long as there's something that it's aligned and proper, it's going to send that ballot image over to the tabulator. And at that point, it's he gonna say, it's a good ballot, or we've got issues with that ballot and we need to look at it. And that's what the system does. The reason why the scanner would not allow the ballots to be sent over to the tabulator is because there was something going on with the scanner itself, which we're going to address. The fact that the ballots would not scan did not keep them eventually getting over to the tabulator. And when we looked at the amount of ballots we had scanned, sent over to the tabulator, they equaled. Okay, so there was no extra votes sent over to the tabulator. There was no missing ballots sent from the scanner to the tabulator. And during the adjudication process, we've already said there was no issues with that. Okay, which leads me to believe we've got a scanner issue and not a tabulating problem.
And I believe too, Chairman Rapp, that Dr. Bradford took excellent notes with numbers as
Yes.
far as how many actual ballots were in each batch, and everything matched up at the end of the night.
Correct. Correct.
So, and also in my review yesterday.
Any other, yeah, well, please do.
Shannon, this is my first time actually being able to observe scanning of absentee ballots, and I have to say that I was impressed with how carefully everybody handled the batches, and accounted for the batches, and I felt like it was a very smooth process. I will agree that, you know, we definitely have a scanner issue. I definitely agree that we need to, you know, figure out what the issue is. My question is, this is my first time being at, maybe seeing that process. Were the ballots a little different than previous elections, and did, you know,
Would that have played into it?
Yes,
the equation?
yes. I mean, I think there were 3 folds where before we had only had 2 folds in November. So we hadn't had that many folds, but it should not have mattered. I mean, you should be able to straighten them out and kind of tweak them and get them to go through. That was the first time with that many folds, but in that long of a ballot.
My other question is this the same scanner you've used in previous?
Correct, it is.
and without any issues?
Right. Right.
So I'm just trying to get a historical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we need to remember that this scanner was delivered in February of 2020. So it's a little over 2 years old. I mean, it is probably time for a tune-up.
My opinion, the count was very accurate, and there was no mistakes made. But as far as the proficiency of the scanner, certainly there was problems.
Yeah, thank you.
Right, and there was no noted issues during the LNA, so there was no reason for us to call a technician down here to say, hey, come take a look at our scanner because, well, it's working like it's supposed to. Dominion would have laughed at us at that point. Until we have an issue, Dominion's not gonna come down and help us.
Question,
Yeah.
not question, but a comment that I would make is if we ever have to do this going forward in the fall election or in any other election with more absentee ballots, the time frame was even, threw a question into the accuracy or what was going on, because we took so much time just with these ballots, but the time frame that it took was there because we wanted to be accurate, and we wanted to make sure that if going forward, there was really no real issues that we have to deal with. So that in itself makes the printer the scanner a real question. It's
And another question we may want to think about in the future is maybe getting another scanner, a backup scanner.
Yeah.
I don't know what they cost, or just so we have
And my question is,
spitball.
if it passed LNA and it doesn't work the time that you use it, what's wrong with the LNA process? Is there something wrong with the LNA process? What's to prevent something like this happening in the future? I'm questioning the LNA process.
Well,
Not the
I was
actual-
sitting right there when she was doing the LNA process.
Not the process itself, but the steps in the process. Again, my question is, how comes it passed LNA and it didn't work?
Didn't
have any
How many times you take your car to a mechanic, it's been working perfectly, you drive it out there and something happens.
Well,
There's nothing
yeah,
related to
I
that.
agree these things can happen, but we're talking about elections here.
And so the LNA
Not
was
Right.
4 weeks prior to the actually when we used the scanner again on Tuesday night. And we also didn't have, those were not mail-in ballots. I mean, we don't, when we LNA them, they don't get bent, and maybe they should, they don't get folded,
Maybe
bent,
they
stuff
should.
like that,
I
so.
mean, looking
um,
forward.
Yeah, so it was just a regular long ballot.
Yeah. I mean, would it not behoove us to use the actual thing that's going to go through the scanner, like the absentee, the folded ballots? And just off the record here, I think that you all deserve a medal for what you did. And I've got to say, Deborah, that smile stayed on your face under tremendous, tremendous stress. And I have to applaud you for that. And I need you to teach me patience. I need it.
All right, so the other question I do have is, so when the scanner says, I reject this ballot, but then it shoots out 3 extra. Is that's a function of the scanner because it's scanning so fast that it picks up 4 of them before it realizes I cannot adjudicate this one.
You can't read that
I can't
ballot,
read
yeah.
this ballot, but it's already scanned 3 more. And it says, all right, I'm gonna reject all 4 of these. And the screen will tell you, I'm rejecting these 4 ballots. I have not scanned these ballots. Go back and look at those 3. So then you pick up the 4 ballots. You look at the very first one you pulled up, because that's the suspect one. You look at it and you put it back in to be rescanned. So yes, it appears that we're scanning these ballots multiple times, but we're not. We're trying to get them scanned one time perfectly. And through the process of, we had this many ballots over here, we scanned this many ballots, and on the tabulator, we have the exact number. And it all equals, as long as it all equals, there's no issue with the scanning process.
And the one time that it wasn't equal is when we stopped the process because my count said one thing and what was coming through on the machine said something different, and we knew that we had stuck a bad ballot in there, and the machine is programmed to do what it's programmed to do. You can't fool it. You know, we're making assumptions about what happened, and we are trying to create a problem caused by perception. We got a black box process. We had input, they went into the scanner, we had output. That's as basic a logic problem as you can get. And as when the number input equals the number output, then the process in that black box must be working. So if we want to acknowledge that we are addressing a perception, then let's do that. But let's not imply that the process is broken or that the scanner is broken. And when we go from logic and accuracy to real time, what happens in between is humans. We touch those ballots, and if it says do not fold, we fold. If it says mark it in black, we mark it in blue. If it says color the circle, we use a check mark. So, and people get all sorts of marks on the machine. The machine it's programmed within the parameters that Shannon talked about. So now if we just want to talk about counting ballots for the sake of counting ballots to make everybody feel good, then let's address that. But in terms of the accuracy of the process, we didn't miss any ballots. We certainly didn't change any ballots. So, I would just prefer that we're honest and open about what it is we're actually doing. And if perception, we're going to talk about perception, and perception is reality, and we all know that. And so if it means that we need to take the time to count the ballots, then let's do that. But let's be honest and say we're doing this to make sure that there is not a perception created in the community that the process didn't work the way it was supposed to. And I think back to the point of one of the speakers earlier, and I realize we aren't supposed to address the issues, but scanning 2244 ballots, that's not a sufficient sample size. So, we either need to look at them all in terms, and we're gonna have the same issues. It didn't take them the first time. It's not gonna take them this time. It took us 2.5 hours the other night. It's gonna take us 2.5 hours. Now that would be suspect. If we could run those ballots in less than the time it took us on Tuesday night, then that would be suspect. But it's looking for the same thing. It's the same ballots. It's gonna kick the same ballots, and you learn to fool the machine. Sometimes it goes through and sometimes it doesn't. But as long as the count is what it is supposed to be, then I think that's all we can do. And that's why we count. I mean, we count these ballots probably over the course of getting the ballots. We probably count them at least 8 times, probably. Because there are 3 people on the board that's doing the early processing, and every one of them counts the ballot. So that's a 3-time count before we ever even open them. And then we have 3 people standing to acknowledge that, yes, the number you said you started with, that's on the same batch form, is the number that we end up with. So the probability of an error in the count is I'd say non-existent. But again, if it's a perception issue, let's deal with the perception issue as opposed to an accuracy issue.
Can I go along? Going along with what you said, I agree with that, but here's the question. There is a furthering of the question, and there is a process by which we can verify an account that I believe the chairman is aware of it, the method in which we would go back and make sure that everything is as we say. The process is we take a sampling of 100. Can you explain it?
Yeah, so I think everybody has this in their blue folder. It's a state election board rule, 183-1-15-03. And it talks about recounts and hand recounts. And if you flip over to page 2, backside, paragraph 2, this is on the SEB rule. Does everyone have that?
I don't have it.
Restrictions on
What's
candidates.
that? Tab A?
Tab A, thank you very much.
Oh, sorry about that. Thought it was in the blue folder. Tab 1 or tab A?
Sorry.
Okay. So on page 2, paragraph 2, it says recount by manual hand count. And it says a recount shall be conducted by manually hand counting only, as provided under Rule 183-1-15.03 1C. So that's on page 1. So this is where it says you're going to take 75 ballots marked by an electronic ballot marking device and 25 absentee ballots marked by hand that were cast in the election to be recounted. The ballot shall be selected from 3 different precincts if available. The selection of individual ballots from the precinct's ballots container shall be conducted in a manner that selects ballots from throughout the ballot container. The test deck shall be tabulated by the ballot scanner or scanners to be used in the recount using 1 or more batches. A manual hand count of the test deck shall be made and compared to the electronic tabulation of the test deck. If the 2 counts do not match, the discrepancy shall be researched and additional tests may be run. If the discrepancy cannot be resolved so that the manual hand count and electronic tabulation of the test deck matches, the ballot scanner shall not be used in the recount. If after all testing available ballot scanners, there are no ballot scanners authorized to be used in the recount shall be conducted by hand, manually by hand. Okay, so that is the process for doing the recount per the state election board. So we've already established by doing a review of the ballots in question, that there's no discrepancy in them. So in my opinion, the scanner and the tabulator matched.
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
So what you were reading was with regards to a test deck of
Yes.
75 marked by EBD and 25 absentee ballots marked by hand. So are you suggesting that we take 75 ballots that were cast, we don't, how do you do that? I mean, the
says-
75 ballots marked by an electronic ballot marker. You don't have any advanced ballots marked by an electronic marker. So what 75 ballots would you take? All the other ballots are all together.
Do you take a brand new ballot, a 75 ballot, and run it not off this just for the test, or do you take existing ballots that have been cast and rerun them through?
So my test
How
deck,
do you do this?
my test deck is, I could get 75 ballots marked by machine via my test deck. Because
Okay.
that's what we use to test the machine.
Okay,
So I mean, I could get 75 of those ballots. And I think that's part of the first step. So it's not just as easy as putting the ballots out and counting
Right.
again. It's not that easy. So you have to go through this process, plus then you have to grab 25 hand marked and test your scanner. But we already know we have scanner issues.
yes.
Right. So this is only going to prove that we have scanner issues, not tabulating issues. Which we already know.
But
And
you're-
it does say that you use 75 ballots marked that were cast in the election
Okay.
over 3 different precincts.
Where do you see?
So it's a run on.
But it-
No, it says, and 25 absentee ballots marked by hand that were cast in the election.
So 75 are marked,
By
or
the
I can
election,
use,
yes.
yeah, I can use my test
Okay.
deck one, because I don't have 75 hand marked. I mean, machine marked
Absentee ballots.
absentee
That's
ballots.
Right. So your test deck, that's what you use to run the LNA testing, so you know what those results are. Are they separated by precinct? Because this also says you need to do this from at least 3 precincts, unless that applies to well, it says the ballot shall be selected from at least 3 different precincts if available. See, I don't interpret this to mean that your test deck, a test deck is your LNA test deck. A test deck should include 75 ballots that were marked electronically in the election.
Mhm.
And we have those because when you vote, you just, you
Okay.
print it out.
Right.
But we have no way of knowing which precinct, which ones are from which precinct. We could pull the
we do.
25 from
Yep.
different precincts.
No, we know, we know,
Each of the ballots are in. separate
but
precincts.
that's not what the absentee ballot,
That's not absentee ballot.
no, that's not absentee ballot.
No,
No.
that's,
We're talking about the 75 electronic marks.
Electronically marked absentee
No,
ballot.
no.
No,
It says the test deck shall be prepared to include at least 75 ballots marked by an electronic ballot marker.
That's it.
okay.
so where are you
The
gonna get
BMD.
those? But you
Those
don't know,
come from the election.
but they're not separated by, are they separated by precinct?
Yes.
So at the end of the night, the ballots that fell into the big black box go into that giant case that we have in there.
Yep.
So we do, but what I'm saying is you use those as your 75, those
Yes.
don't look like the 343 that we scanned.
Correct.
So that's not, I don't think that's gonna prove anything
Right.
to
So-
anybody.
We're talking about small sampling, so we're only gonna sample 25 absentee ballots if we do it, if we have to do it by this method. So the small sampling, I guess the state agrees with the small sampling,
What is that?
and they say 25 absentee ballots is enough to prove that your scanner or your tabulator is working.
So
That-
what do we know as a result of that? That tells us, as a result of that, that tells us that the scanner is working. But now.
It
can
tells
we
us the
switch-
tabulator.
Yeah, not the, not
Cause
the
it'll
scanner.
send, well, the
scanner
scanner and the,
and the
tabulator.
tabulator.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Semantics, sorry.
um, if you were to do that, those ballots don't look like the absentee ballots. Can you run them all at one time? Can you run that electronically marked ballot with the absentee ballot at the same time? Can you run a batch of 100 where you got 75 electronically marked ballots and 25
No.
absentee ballots?
No, because the settings would have to be different on the scanner because you have the long ballot and an 8.5 by 11 ballot. Well, I mean, the numbers should come out right, but what I'm saying is if the concern was the scanner on Tuesday night, the 75 ballots don't look like the ballots we scanned on Tuesday night.
But that is the SEB rule,
Right.
okay? So. And the, whoa, hey, offline, everybody offline, what?
Be the first one.
Alright, so, and the only other way to do a manual hand count is through a court order. So that's the two ways. You either do it electronically, or you have to have a court order that makes you hand count them. Any other questions for? All right, I'm gonna open, and this, I'm probably gonna regret this, but I'm gonna do it anyway.
Yeah, you will.
I'm gonna open this up to the public for comments and questions.
But
I'm going to.
put a
I think-
time limit.
it's gonna be a 3-minute time limit. And the same rules apply. Please state your name, address. And we will actually try and answer your questions.
June Maxwell, unincorporated Camden County, Harriet's Bluff. Would you
Close to this, please.
would you please restate what you just said? That you would have to have a court order to do a hand count?
Yes. I will get you the documentation. In fact, I have it right here and I can show it to you where there's only two ways to do a hand count. One is electronically. Or if your machines don't work, then you're authorized to do a hand count. Otherwise, you have to have a court order to do a manual hand recount.
Well, I'm just speechless. That's a first, everyone. But I am speechless about that. We could have recounted with observer in front of everyone and done all 342 in the amount of time that we've been discussing this.
I understand.
So
We have to follow the rules to the best of our ability.
I understand that.
Okay.
That's just astounding to me.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Please state your name and address.
Mary Beckman, District 3. And I just wanted to remind people that, you're not going to be doing the scanning all at once on election day in November, because you're going to be taking advantage of the early processing.
Yes.
And I think that we should encourage citizens to be monitoring that early processing, because a lot of these problems with the scanner and having the dust build up and you wipe it off. That's all stuff that we saw when we were monitoring the early processing back in November of 2020, in late October and November of 2020. And I think that let's just encourage citizens to become more involved in that monitoring. And I think that might help a lot.
Well, here's my plan going forward. There will be at least one person that is not involved in the process, that will be supervising the process, that will be providing updates. Go ahead.
And under what authority are you making that?
I'll be the one doing the supervising.
So wait, you said at least one person who's not involved in the process?
Yes, so all three of us were involved in the process.
Oh, okay.
There
All
was-
right.
there
You
was-
didn't preface it.
Oh, I'm
with
sorry.
The board. I'm like,
Well, it doesn't have to be the board that is
Okay.
the one that's a spokesman. So basically, I want to be able to communicate with the people that are out watching. When they see something that may be questioning to the public, that they can explain it to the public, so we don't get a letter saying, we think you have a problem with your system.
Do we need to pass that in a motion?
do we,
No,
I mean, is that that's why we have observers of the process now. And had questions been raised while we were doing the count?
A lot.
We could have, well, not comments about the quality of the machine, over which we have no control, but questions about the process. And it did look like we were
Yes,
fast and loose with the ballot.
right.
But that's because the people who were operating the scanner, and you notice the only folks who operated the scanner were either Shannon or Deborah, have operated that scanner. They know how to operate the scanner. They know that if it says it's the fourth ballot from the bottom, then pick up the 4 and you gotta rerun those 4. See, we see and we make assumptions based on what we see because we don't know.
What you might not have seen or observed, being that you're inside and I was outside too, I was getting questions on why are there multiple stacks of ballots put to the side and then brought forward? Not just the processing
So-
through the machine, but there were a lot
So
of,
that
there
is-
was a lot of questions.
So that's when
Raised out
an
there.
basically someone has an oversight of what's going on in the tabulation room, can go out to the public when there's questions like that and say, here's what's going on with our scanner right now. These are the issues we're fighting through. And this is the procedures we're using. That's really all I'm looking for, is someone to be a spokesman for.
Communication is
tabulation.
key
And
with
all
this.
I'm saying is that had the questions been raised, I mean, as a professor, that's like my students asking questions among themselves when they don't understand the formula I just put on the board. If you don't understand the formula, ask the professor. So ask the question, as opposed to looking and surmising and coming up with what you think is happening, because we had the same questions. We could have explained it then and there on the spot.
Right.
Why are we doing this?
Right.
So we're doing this because we had that one that would not go through.
Right, so that's why
So-
we have a person that's there just
But
to
we do
answer.
that now, so now
Yeah.
you're just formalizing it?
No,
I
no, the
take-
thing is, when the three of us were involved with the process.
And
At
Anthony was.
what point did we have an opportunity to go out and say, this is what's going on with the scanner? We didn't, because we were involved in the process.
But we could have stopped, just like we did when
But we
that
didn't.
ballot did. But, okay, I understand what you're saying. However, I'm saying that you're not proposing anything new. If the question had been
We're just
raised,
designating.
you could have addressed the question. The question might have been erased.
Or we could have a designated question and answer.
Oh,
I like the designee.
Comment, Mary.
Yes.
Mary Tanner. Just to go, you asked the question and you made a statement, which was, I feel is correct, because of what's gone on in the world. People see things and don't understand,
Right.
period.
Right, that's why we.
And,
that's-
and it is a good thing that you pointed out that we should have somebody to be there to
Answer the questions.
answer the question. A
Somebody
a
that has
member of the
knowledge.
board or a member of the staff.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Right, we failed to communicate.
But that's not, I don't,
Yeah, I agree
I
with
don't
that.
think that's what she said. What she said was we need to have the public more involved in the
Yes.
process.
Yes,
That's it.
and,
Okay.
and I think the public will be more involved if we answer their questions.
If we're more
Thank you,
receptive to
Mary.
answering their questions.
Rachel Baldwin, chairman of the GOP. When I say we have a symbiotic relationship, we can use a lot of analogies, but you can use an operating theater in a hospital where you have the surgeon on the floor, the many medical staff, and the class upstairs behind the glass watching. Hopefully you've got somebody up there telling them what they're doing down on the floor. The situation the other night, we should not have been working in silos. I'm the party chair. I'm pretty aggressive. I really don't have a problem with interrupting you all about what you're doing. It was pretty intense the other night. And I felt like to interrupt would slow down the process. I did ask Shannon a couple of questions, but we had public coming in. And it was not a good look for a group who typicically acts very professionally. As far as the public involved, our party's trained over 55 poll watchers. I observed with you, Dr. Bradford, absentee ballots being counted last Wednesday. I observed with June and with Calvin, absentee ballots. We're getting the public involved. If we're going to get the public involved, we need to be prepared for the public to be involved. Because my worry the other night was people were drawing assumptions that were not true. Let me clear one thing up. The scanner we're talking about, I don't know if we're being recorded, but if we are, I want the public to clearly understand the scanner we are talking about is not the big black box that they put their ballot in
Correct.
as they exit. This was a special scanner designed to accept the long paper. It was a totally different scanner. It's one scanner out of all the scanners used in the county. There was a problem with it. I would like the minutes to reflect, whether I said it or anybody else, that this scanner situation has got to be resolved by November.
Amen.
There's no excuse if we need to send these minutes to the Secretary of State's office, whatever we need to do, it needs to be understood that there's a scanner problem. We also need an evaluation process for that third-party vendor. That third-party vendor, to me, I apologize, but I felt like they were useless in our process. You all were trying to solve the problems. Maybe because I'm standing outside the window, I don't know. Do I stop you and ask you, what is this person doing? I'm not seeing anything that they're doing. Y'all were resolving all the problems. They were being paid to resolve those problems. If that person was just only good for tabulating, then we needed somebody there for the technology. Then we need two people. And I believe we're paying pretty good money for that.
Amen.
So there are issues, but I think beyond that, we need to recognize that all of us are putting a lot into this. Every day we learn not one thing, not two things, not three things, about 10 new things about elections. Nobody can learn everything you need to know about elections. Y'all have that nice big book. I'm gonna get me one too, so I can read the OCGA and follow it.
I'm trying to get everything.
There's a lot to get our heads around. That is why we have a codependent relationship. What we know, we need to share with you. What you know, you need to share with us. I don't want this adversarial relationship. I did not want to ask for this recount for the simple reason I knew how overburdened this election staff was. But now it's time to solve the problem, and we definitely have got to get it solved by November, because we're going to have even more people asking questions, even more of the public showing up. And if we want the public involved, we need to get prepared for the public involved, and it shouldn't all be on the election staff. Thank you.
This problem will be resolved by the runoff election. It has to be.
Well, but again, it's a piece of electronic equipment. So you have no way of knowing whether or not the next one coming in, if we have another ballot that's 8.5 by 17 with 30 questions on it, depending on the precinct that you, or the combination of the ballot that you got, you know, you can't make it foolproof. So
But you can
I'm
make it
all-
more
But you can do everything within your power to make it the best it can be.
Thank you.
And test it and test it and test it.
But testing, you can test, you know,
But at least I can look at the voter and say, this was working perfectly before the election.
and it was.
And
I
it
think we
was.
can say that.
But at the time of the election, did anyone go out and tell the electors this piece of equipment had been LNA tested and was working properly
With the
before
wrong
this
sample,
election?
with the wrong sample, with
Excuse
the wrong sample.
Hold on. You don't have the floor, sir. In a while, you will have the floor. Go ahead, Mr. Winkle.
Thank you. Steve Winkle, Harrods Bluff. I want to get a clarification. Are we talking about on election night, we scanned 343 ballots? Is that the correct number that is being used? Okay, thank you.
42.
Absentee ballots, I'm sorry, yes.
Oh,
Thanks
it's
for that
342. It's 342, Mr. Winkle.
342,
Yes.
okay.
I did say 343 earlier, my
Right.
apologies.
342. Is that
Okay.
the two that were rejected that have to be redone?
So there were 343 ballots we got, I said, but we only could scan 342 because that 343 would not go
Okay,
through the
so-
scanner.
Right, and then we have one UACOP.
So the one that wouldn't go through the scanner and the UACAVA need to be duplicated, and that's,
Right,
The
so
plan
we
for
have
tomorrow.
343 absentee ballots, 342 of them were scanned and tabulated. One has to be redone because the scanner would not read it. So it has to be physically, we have to sit down and do a recreation for it.
Okay, on the report
a duplicate.
that was issued on, at 1:25 in the morning, there is no column to indicate that one particular ballot.
And there would not be.
And
You
so
mean
it
that
was,
number?
I'm sorry?
You mean 342, like you didn't see that number?
Wait, you're reporting 342, but not 343. So where did that
Correct.
ballot end up, or did it not count at all?
So not on the time of the report. The ballot will not count until right before certification. Once it can be scanned and tabulated, then it will go in the count of all the ballots and then the vote will be certified.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, that's clear. And I'm assuming it will go into the column as absentee
Yes.
ballots received.
Yes.
And therefore, the assumption will be that it was processed like the
Yes.
others, even though it received special attention.
As long as it meets the criteria and can be scanned.
Okay, I mean, I think that's a satisfactory process, but it's not clear in the
Understand.
process here. The point that I wish to make about this half an hour of 45 minutes worth of discussion we've had is that the public is dependent on a piece of equipment that has proven itself not to perform on the day that it is needed. It's no different than a parachute. You can pack it 100 times and look at it and say, it looks great to me, but if you need that parachute, it better work. And so what you have is an unreliable process, and you don't know why it's unreliable. And it requires intervention by people that do not know why it's failing.
Right.
And so that is exactly the process that I participated in for 15 years. And in every single case, my boss told me, the customer is right. It has to perform. It'll cost us $25 million if it doesn't perform when the customer expects us. And so the customer is right. You're the customer representing the rest of us. That piece of equipment's junk. It needs to be junked. It needs to be thrown away as an anchor. If it's under warranty and they haven't performed under warranty, we need to get our money back. I mean, it's solved that way. It isn't up to us to figure out what's going wrong. We don't know what's in the black box. The black box is exactly that. It's hocus pocus to us. And we're never going to know what's in the black box. No, we don't. We don't know. That's their trade secret. And so the fact of the matter is that it didn't function when it needed to function for the people who have to run it. And no matter how many people you had in the room, you didn't have the right person.
Right.
And they didn't provide you with the right person for their unreliable piece of equipment. And so you don't have a solution. Not from that machine.
Correct.
And that's the way it needs to proceed. As far as running more tests on it, those more tests would have been just to prove that it doesn't work
Right.
using the ballots.
And that's the whole point of the whole recount. It's not going to prove, the only thing it's going to prove is our equipment didn't work. It's not going to disprove the election results. It's going to prove that our equipment did not function properly.
That's correct. And that's exactly what I thought this conversation was about, frankly, is that if you run it in a normal course of a ballot count, which could be done right now at this minute, go downstairs, grab the 342 ballots and try to run them through, you'll have the same kind of complication. And so all you're doing is verifying that the equipment's useless going forward unless it's resolved to our satisfaction.
Right.
So that's what I thought this meeting was about, frankly.
It will be resolved with our
Thank you.
satisfaction.
And it did produce results. It
Yes,
just
the
took us
results-
longer to
Correct.
do it than we should have. It
Correct.
did work. And it did produce the
It did.
proper results. It just didn't work as efficiently as it did when it ran 4,500 ballots through it in November of 2020.
Thank you. I think it's important that we realize we didn't just start using that scanner Tuesday night. We've used that very same scanner since 2020. It's the same scanner that we used for the presidential election. It's the same scanner that we used for all the elections we've had since then. This is the first time we had a ballot that was 8.5 by 17 inches long. And did Canon design it for that purpose? Who knows? But it's the equipment that we have, so it's not, and the comment was made that we had an unusable process. We have an unusable piece of equipment, not the process. The equipment is faulty. So we argued about a warranty. We got a warranty. That's why you have a warranty on equipment, so you can get another piece of equipment.
And we've called into the meeting to get a technician out.
So
So we're the only county of 159, or maybe one other we can't verify, that had this issue with their scanner. So, because, no, okay.
We don't know that.
Sorry. Like I said, of the people that reported on the email chain that Mr. Michaels was talking about, one other county was having issues.
We don't know how big that change.
We don't know how big the county was. We don't know what type of scanner they have, because there's 3 or 4 different scanners.
But that's a question maybe we should ask
Yes.
the Secretary of State. Did other counties have the same issue?
Yeah.
And is there something that needs to be done to the scanner when you're working with a piece of paper that is not, if it's designed to work with 8.5 by 11, it might do 8.5 by 14, it might do 8.5 by 17, but when it's doing them that fast and flipping them over, and you can put them in either way, then, you may have issues. So I dare say we probably were not the only county,
Yeah,
unless we were
I
the only
know.
ones that had a ballot that wrong.
No, everybody, the whole state had 18-inch ballots.
And
So,
we're-
and it's going to get fixed. I don't want to do that again
No.
in June for the runoff, and I sure as heck don't want to do it again in November. It will be fixed. It will be
And
fixed.
this will be good for our after action report that's required for doing our new strategic plan.
I don't, can I,
Yes.
I don't want to go
Mr.
into
Michaels, you have the floor.
I don't want to go into anything further, but there's another issue that is like an elephant in the room. The public has every right in the world to observe what's going on and have it explained to them. We are working in a jail cell. And
Thank you.
Not to know
Thank you.
wherever it is.
I've never been in a jail cell, so I don't know.
Well, I spent 38 years dealing with people in jail cells. I understand. But that issue has to be addressed also.
Immediately.
And how to do that is up to the county because we are not, well, this board doesn't have the authority to do anything other than what we are doing now. But I'm looking past Mr. Blue over here and I'm looking at that. If that kind of, it is available to us so that people can see what we're doing and hear what we're doing.
Thank you.
Then maybe
That's ventilation.
that would answer some of the questions to give people more confidence in the integrity of what we are doing. Thank you. That's all I'm going to say.
I appreciate you bringing that up because that was one of my observations too. And I think it is also very unhealthy. And I personally observed someone getting kind of lightheaded because there's no ventilation in there. And there's no place to put ballots. I mean, it has got to be addressed. We were promised that we were going to get a new office. It's a year and a half. We are no further today than we were then. But it has to be addressed. It has to be fixed.
That's for another meeting.
Okay, I'm done.
Mr. Blue, you have the floor.
Kelvin Blue, St. Mary's, Georgia. Many of the speakers prior to me have very valid and reasonable input, and I appreciate that. Going forward, it seems to me that we have identified this is a single item, which is going to be the printer. Can we replace it?
Scanner.
Do we have the scanner? Can we replace it? Do we have the ability to have a backup, as Chairman Rapp already spoke about? And the ability to swap them out, or what we call hot swap in a technical setting, as necessary, or even put them side by side during the election counting process and just run them both. If there's an issue, you shift to the next one, or you run them both and one cops out, you've got the second. But it sounds like we've established, no matter what, going forward, we must address the current printer that's there. I don't know if it's a budget issue. I don't know if there's some kind of,
It's under warranty. They will
paperwork.
make it right.
so
They will either fix it or replace it.
with a notice to the public that this has occurred, if we address the confirmed issue, then going forward, we should never be at this point again. The count has been verified. It's accurate with all the information that we are able to get. So if we're able to go forward, we've confirmed the numbers are correct. We've confirmed that the issue is limited to the scanner. Let's come to an agreement and let's move forward whatever way it needs to be.
Amen.
Thank you for your time.
Any other discussion?
Just have, I guess, I always like to ask folks, what will make you whole? So are we accepting that the problem is the scanner, that we do not need a recount? Or is the issue still there of the recount? Because that was the question. So we've explained why it appears that we may need a recount, but I would, and I don't know if this is appropriate, but the question was raised regarding the recount. And we said, well, the problem is the scanner. So does that address the issue with the person who raised the question regarding the recount? Does replacing the scanner, and the election results have to be certified by tomorrow, right?
Tuesday. They just changed it to Tuesday.
They changed the certification date till Tuesday,
Okay.
by close of business. So
Okay.
the election has to be certified by then. The rules still remain for UOCAVA ballots. That can be received and counted tomorrow, as well as provisional ballots. So that all still applies. They're just giving, I believe, a select few counties a little bit longer to certify.
So again, my question is, have we addressed the intent of the question? And have we addressed the perceptions? Because if we haven't, then probably not done. And I think maybe
And yeah,
we'll find that out.
that's what I was gonna say. That would be Miss Baldwin for
We
her.
have addressed the intent. I
Okay.
don't believe we have completely addressed perception. My preference would have been that in acknowledging that those ballots did indeed match what the scanner and what the tabulation was on the end of Tuesday night, I would have liked the public to have been involved in that. It's already been done. I will leave that up to you as the board, but to answer your question, the intent, yes, the perception partially. I do want to clear up one thing, the term black box is being thrown around. Again, perception. There is a thing called a scanner. And I'm speaking now, let me change gears. And I'm making sure everybody understands clearly. And somebody may need, I wish Leona was here, she'd correct me. I'm talking about the scanners at the polling places. Those are scanners. A while ago, I said, understand clearly, the scanner we're talking about right now is the scanner that was used for the folded ballots. It's a different scanner. A black box is inside the scanner. It is not a endless hole. It is emptied with witnesses who make sure there are no ballots left in that box and no ballots left in the emergency storage. And all the numbers from the poll pads to the signature page to the ballot marking device to the scanner at the polling place, all those numbers have to match. I don't want the public misunderstanding there's some nefarious black box around here where ballots are hiding. I realize I got a little overly passionate today. That was not intended in any other form than to make a point. I appreciate your time and attention, and we wish to continue in a symbiotic and a codependent positive relationship. Thank you.
Thank you.
And let me, I feel like I need to clarify because sometimes I'm operating from a different perspective. When I talked about the black box, the generic description of a process is input, black box, output. Had nothing to do, I wasn't even thinking about the fact that there is literally, I guess, a black box inside the big black scanners that are at the polling places.
Yes, the scanner that's on top of the black box.
So my apologies, I should be more careful with my terminology. Thank you.
Mr. Flatter, you have the floor.
I'd like to comment on what Dr. Bradford has brought up about the integrity of the results of the election this year. At this primary, I certainly think that, it's in our own mission statement that we create community confidence and trust in the voting and democratic process. And it's in my opinion that, yes, although we have a machine that needs attention and needs to be replaced and the process needs a little tweaking, the results of the election, I believe, I'm fully confident are accurate. And I don't think it does any justice to call into question those results or to ask for a recount. So in my opinion, a recount.
Are you making a motion? I'm ready for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we address the issue of the scanner and have it replaced or repaired as per our warranty, and that we do not do a recount.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Mr. Flatter made a motion. Barbara Hahn made a second. The floor is open for discussion by the board members only.
An issue with what said about the portion of your request, you're not satisfied. Could get a clarification of what you're not satisfied.
Perception.
Thank you for indulging us. I appreciate it.
I believe you all have indulged me as well. I would have preferred that in validating those 343 absentee ballots, that a member of the public be present. in our original letter from the party, we offered any workforce help y'all may need. I realize that, you know, you don't want it from one party. I think Kelvin can help us out too. That count has been done, and you know, I don't want, I can be satisfied with that. It is a bit alarming, as Ms. Maxwell brought out, that if we do want to recount, we need a court order, is what I heard,
For a hand recount, yeah.
for a hand recount. I'm not a number person, so I got a little bit lost in all of that sampling.
Sorry. Yep.
Which, in my simple mind, the intent of those two races was because most of the public who observed what happened Tuesday night were related in some way to those two races, that it would, for them and their constituents or followers or whatever, and for our Camden County public, because we can't save the world, but we can make sure Camden County's right, is that they understand that we're all on top of this and that the process was accurate and fair.
All right.
Does that answer?
Would the board like to ask the candidates that are here if they're satisfied with our results today? And would the candidates be willing to come up to the mic and say yes or no? Trying to make them whole.
Steve Winkle. I am satisfied that we have beat to death the absentee ballot scanner issue. I am not satisfied that we have addressed at all the accuracy of the full count of the election, because that has not been addressed tonight.
Right.
I want to clarify that I think that the scanner issue is resolved.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Jim Goodman, candidate-elect District 4, what he said.
Thanks, sir.
Martin Turner, 169 Austin Ryan Drive. I'm definitely satisfied with what happened. You know, I've been a poll worker now for, I think, 4 or 5 years with you guys. I've always seen that these folks that work for you guys are full of integrity. Try to do one thing wrong, they'll drag you into a room and chew your butt out. I know, because this happened to me on more than one occasion.
But never in public.
But
never in public.
never in public.
No.
He's looking for Leanne.
See who said that? Okay. Oh, I didn't see who said it.
I said that.
Oh, you did? Okay. But, I mean, I do know that you guys work with integrity. I appreciate this. I appreciate Rachel bringing it up. I'm not opposed to a recount if that's what you want to do. I want to see the best for Camden County myself. I want to see the transparency, and I want to know that what happened was really real. So whatever you decide, I'm good with it. Okay? Thank you.
And on that, I feel that we do more harm calling for a recount in the public's trust than we do by not calling for, because the integrity of our staff is.
Right. Now the question if we
And
do a recount.
Can I just add something
Yes.
to, I really came in this morning and I just wanted to just review
Right.
those ballots. So I know that there's certain processes and procedures we must follow to do an official recount. That is why no public was invited. I was simply, as the election supervisor, going behind and rechecking everything. And I was able to confirm that I am confident in the results that are posted.
Any other comments?
Call the question.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Any other additional public comments before we adjourn? All right. If there is no objection, this meeting will now adjourn. Oh, go ahead.
I still think, because perception is reality. And I just feel as if we have somehow come short, fallen short of addressing the perceptions, because people will walk out, you know, we take your word for it. And we all, not that we question your word, but we take your word for it. So I don't know what we need to do, maybe as we did with the challenge in December, we write a letter. I don't know, maybe we put something in the paper.
That's
But
what
I
I was
think
gonna
it's
suggest.
important.
We
Okay,
put something
so
in the
I think that's a great idea. We put
Yeah.
something in the paper
Yep.
that says,
Saw the issue, we addressed the issue, we're fixing it.
that the issue was an equipment issue.
Yes.
And the count was accurate and as Dr. Becker mentioned earlier, we invite people to participate in the process because the better informed you are, the less questions you have. So that was it.
One other thing before we have public comments, I did forget the important upcoming dates. Memorial Day holiday, all county offices will be closed May 30th. The May 24th primary special election certification is May 31st at 5 p.m. And the general primary nonpartisan runoff will be June 21st with at least 1 week of early voting, advanced in-person voting. All right, additional public comments. Thank you, sir.
My name is Ben Goff. I live at Harriet's Bluff. I regret being here tonight. I was one of those citizens that lost an extra hour or two of sleep trying to determine what the outcome was.
Yes, sir.
And I echo everything that's been said about the lack of communication.
Yes.
And I actually did some looking at the numbers, and it totally overwhelmed me. I had a hell of a time with math when I was in school, so I just kind of dribbled through it. One comment that I would have, I would never jump out of an airplane that was flying myself. But if I did, and I had that air parachute that Winkle was talking about, if it didn't have a reserve chute, I ain't going out of that airplane.
I agree.
I would not expect this county to depend on one piece of machinery. I don't know how much it costs and really don't care. It's the redundancy that should be there.
Right.
Lastly, I have every confidence that every person involved in this is of great integrity. What we need to realize is that there are old people like me sitting out there that trust, but we want to verify.
I understand.
We should have had public people involved from that party and that party with that. Thank you.
I understand. Thank you.
Jim Goodman, 309 Burrell Boulevard. Ben, just to say this, you can skydive without a parachute, but you can only do it one time.
Happened to a person that didn't survive once.
Yes.
I don't think he ever parachuted again.
He didn't kill the person he fell on.
They may have.
And God was with him, but maybe not with the person he fell on. There is no question that this elections board and all of the staff are wonderful, dedicated public servants. And I am not by any means questioning that. And I appreciate the service of this elections board along with the staff. I've always been treated with a great deal of courtesy and respect. And I was telling Sandy in the elections office when she called at 3:30 to tell me there was a 4:30 meeting. And she was very cautious about that. And I said, Sandy, it's fine. I said, I didn't realize that District 4 was up for question also. We don't get upset about stuff like that. We roll with the punches. So here's what I want to say to you. And Ms. Nettles and staff, Sandy, don't take this as a criticism of you. But I believe, Mr. Rep, you said that it would be an insult to this staff if we called for a recount, that it would in the mind of the public.
I
it would
agree
call-
with that. I didn't make the statement, but I agreed with it.
Somebody said, thank you, Anthony. Let me redefine that statement for you. There is a history, and it's one that benefited me personally, of a perception in the public that the governing board of the county commission itself, has put themselves before the public. they campaigned for me very hard when they did that, and I won. And I'm totally convinced of that, and you can agree with it or not. But that statement, and Anthony, I love you, but you don't come in front of the public. We don't come before the board voters as a board of elections, as a commissioner-elect, as a city councilman sitting now. We don't come before the public. If we're saying that we don't want to offend our staff, because if we call for a recount to satisfy the public, we're going to hurt them, that's backwards. That is totally backwards. And I would say to you that we can ask their forgiveness, and we can say to them, this is not a reflection of your hard work, but we need to do this. And that can be explained. I will help you write the prose for it, to the point that the public understands that to a degree we ate humble pie. And I'm speaking collectively because I consider myself now a part of this government. We ate humble pie and we said, you know, it hurts to do this, but we're going to do what's right for the public, because the public has not been done right for a long time in Camden County. And I firmly believe that. I was a little bit flippant when I said what he said, but he speaks so eloquently. He does his research. And none of that reflects on the race that he ran and his opponent. It's just that now more than ever, governments and boards and authorities are being looked at very, very closely. I think you're going to make a mistake if you don't do a recount. I think the mistake you're going to make is 50,000 strong, as opposed to, Shannon, how many on the staff in the elections board? How many?
4 staff, by
4 staff.
elections board.
Begging the pardon of that staff, and I have had nothing but pleasant experiences. They're highly intelligent people, and we can explain to them, this is not to offend you. This is to do our duty to the voters of Camden County. It is a recount or it is a mistake. And I firmly believe that. And thank you for listening to me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Without standing up, I want to thank y'all for a two-way conversation. I think that it's novel, this room, for a long time to be able to actually talk to y'all.
I have to agree.
Have a dialogue that I think. I appreciate that very much.
We appreciate the public. Anything else? Anyone else? All right, there be no objection. This meeting will now adjourn. Since there is no objection, this meeting is adjourned.